Hello and welcome back to another episode of this week's watches, and this week we have an incredible drop for you once again. 12 amazing pieces from vintage Rolex to vintage Omega to modern Omega to Longines to Tudor to everything you can possibly imagine, including a Fears and a Baltic. So some stuff I'm very excited to bring to you guys and girls. But before we get into that, as always, down in the description there is a link to every watch you see. So if you don't see the watch on the website, follow that link. It will take you to the website where that watch is, so you can definitely find it, and it will tell you if it's sold or not as well. So you'll see all the details there, as well as a timestamp to skip to that specific watch, to skip all my rambling. And as always, if you would like to sell a watch, get in contact, kibblewatches.co.uk. There's a sell form, fill that out, nice and simple. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. I also do want to say a big thank you for the positive feedback. When this goes out over a week ago, it would have been, we did a website-wide price correction to reflect the new market we find ourselves in. So as I say, each week, it's been an incredible week, and it really has. Each week, each month, this year in general has been an incredible year, actually better than last year, which might come as a surprise to some of you guys and girls, considering the markets where they are, and just this industry in general, right? How prices have changed over the past couple of months. But for us, we're still breaking records personally, and that's because we're not afraid to correct with the prices. We're not afraid to accept that prices have come down on certain models and change our pricing accordingly, rather than keeping the prices all the way up here and pretending like nothing has happened. And we did a little post on Instagram, we sent out an email, and the response was incredible, so thank you all very much. At the end of the day, we want to do things honestly and fairly here at Kibble Watches. It's what I've always wanted to do. And I wouldn't be in this position with an office here in London and over 120 watches on the website if it wasn't for you guys and girls. So as always, I'm going to put you first, I'm going to treat you fairly, and I'm going to tell you how it is. So yes, the market has changed, it has shifted, prices have come down, and on the crazy hype stuff, it's pretty much falling through the floor on some pieces, and I'm talking the Nautiluses and the Royal Oaks of certain models and things like that, right? That market, which I don't deal in, and we very rarely ever have pieces that are even remotely like those. So for us, it's not been massively affected, but in general, the whole market has corrected and there has been a shift, and we've priced accordingly, and we always aim to do that. We always have, and we always will. And I think a lot of you guys and girls come back time and time again because you know that. We treat you fairly, and we sell fairly, and we buy fairly as well. So now that all that rambling is out of the way, let's show you what's on wrist. I'm wearing my beautiful 1969 Rolex 6694. This is a personal watch. This isn't for sale, and I hope that it will never be for sale. It's one of those watches I would like to keep for forever, really. It's a really great watch. It has personal and sentimental value to me, but as always, at the end of the day, I run a business, so if things have to go for sale, they do. But again, this is one I'm going to do my best to keep hold of for forever, really. So now that we've got all that out of the way, let's crack on with what you're here to see, and that is the watches on the table. We're going to start with a birth year Submariner for me, actually. This 1997 Submariner, no date. Let's take a closer look. So what a watch to begin with this week on Kibble Watches. So this is the Rolex Submariner no date two-liner, as it's often referred to. This is a 14060 reference, and inside is the automatic Rolex Caliber 3000. Now this watch is from July 1997 with its paperwork. It doesn't come with its original box, unfortunately, but it does have its original paperwork, which is always nice, and obviously boxes are period generic, so you could always buy a box online and all of a sudden you've got box and paperwork. Now the case is nice and strong. It has seen a polish wheel, but likely not often at all. You can see the case is really good, and often a way to tell is how close those holes are towards the end of the case. This one is nice. The original aluminium bezel does feature a couple of scratches, and the dial does have a little mark just above or around the E on Submariner. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but you'll be able to see it in the additional photos under points of mention on the website that we do on every watch going forward, so you can see that. Nice original tritium dial, tritium hands. Yes, that mark is going to really sort of put some people off, but to be honest, on wrist you can't really tell it's there unless you're really looking for it or looking under a loop, in which case obviously you will see it's there. Screw down crown, nice Rolex bracelet with the dive extension and the folding clasp with the extra security lock as you'd expect. This is a T serial. and obviously the 40mm Submariner. Personally, I prefer the 2-line of text compared to the 4-line of text. It's nicer for me, and obviously you've got the drilled lug holes, which is nice. This is the hollow bracelet with the hollow end link, so do keep that in mind. But again, you know, it's got that charming vintage Rolex feel, even though it's not fully vintage, and it's got the modern reliability of sapphire crystal and the upgraded movement with the Rolex Caliber 3000. But let's show this one on wrist and talk dimensions. And here we go, paired on my 7-inch wrist. It's a classic looking watch, there's no question about it. So what you're looking at is 40mm by 47mm lug to lug, only 13mm thick and 20mm on the lugs with drilled lug holes to make swapping out a easy task. Although on the bracelet, I think it definitely looks best. So go check this one out on the website today. From there, let's switch over to one of the nicest Datejust or vintage Datejust I have had in a while. This is a beautiful Sigma dial Rolex Datejust 36mm with the fluted bezel and original period Jubilee as well. It's wonderful. Let's take a closer look. Next up, we have this beautiful Rolex Oyster Perpetual Datejust reference 1601, and this is an early one. From circa 1973, and it features its original Sigma tritium dial. For those of you that aren't aware, what Sigma means is on the side of Swiss T-Swiss, on the bottom you can see the little Sigma symbol, and what that denotes is that the indices and the hands are 18 karat white gold. So it's just a higher grade of dial and it's more desirable. People really do search out for these references, and this is probably one of the nicest I have seen personally. The condition is immaculate on the dial and the hands. The tritium is aged beautifully. The fluted bezel is nice and strong, which is obviously 18 karat white gold, and the case is nice and strong too. It's definitely seen a polish wheel, but nothing major at all, and it still is nice and strong for a 1601. And it comes on a beautiful Rolex Jubilee, which is the folded link Jubilee as you'd expect from this period. These are often, you don't see these often because they get very stretched, whereas this one's still really nice and strong, and they get replaced when they get sent to Rolex, because this is, you know, it's literally folded pieces of metal. So, you know, people would rather the more solid bracelet. I get it, but there's a charm to this bracelet, and there's also something amazing about having the original bracelet. Nice case back as well, as you'd expect. Inside is the automatic Rolex Caliber 1570, and this one has recently just come back from a full service with our watchmaker and is running beautifully. You have the original date wheel as well with the open 6 and 9, and what that essentially means, if you look at the 6, you can see it doesn't touch, as in when it closes, hence the name open 6 and open 9. All these little details add up for a really beautiful package, and just something that you do not see often in this kind of condition. So let's show it on wrist and talk dimensions. And here we go, paired comfortably on my 7-inch wrist. This kind of Datejust always looks great on a Jubilee, but also it looks great on an Oyster, it looks great on a leather strap. You know, I'd personally be wearing this on a beautiful suede, like a brown suede. I know it's my go-to pretty much all the time, but there's a reason for that. It just looks good on everything. So this is 36mm by 44mm lug to lug, 11.5mm thick, and 20mm at the lug. So nice and easy. Just change out straps, especially with the drilled lug holes. So go check this beautiful watch out on the website today. From there over to a transitional Speedmaster. It may look like a standard Speedmaster, but this is actually a transitional model from 1996, 1997 thereabouts, with the caliber 861. So this predates the 1861, the 1861 we saw, and obviously that predates the 3861 that we now see in the Speedmaster. So this is a very, very cool reference. It still features tritium, which is very, very nice. So let's take a closer look. Next up is an Omega Speedmaster reference you do not see come up often, and at first glance it just looks like the standard Speedmaster. Apart from when you take a closer look, you'll see tritium dial, tritium hands, which are beautifully starting to age, and the dial itself is this nice black, which has gone a little bit lighter, not a lot at all, but it has definitely, you know, it's probably like one tone lighter than what it would have been originally, and that will continue to develop, which I find fascinating as well. You have a Hesalite crystal, so plastic crystal, which means you can polish it out, and solid closed case back, including a folding clasp that just pushes down. So this is a reference 345.0022. Now this, as I said, is a transitional reference with the manually wound Omega Caliber 861. For a lot of you, you'll know that the movement that we see after the 861 is the 1861 and is now the 3861, which is a coaxial movement. This was the movement that they used after the 321. So the 321 being the original Speedmaster movement, Lemania based, that is very famous in the watch world and people really desire that movement. This is the one they used after that, which is still a Lemania based and still an incredible movement that people, watchmakers just love working on. So it's great to have one with the 861. Again, does it really make a difference in the grand scheme of things? Not really, but it's just one of those cool features, and the fact you have tritium as well, which is really nice. And this one being circa 96, 97 makes for a potential great birth year for someone as well, so do keep that in mind. It's in great condition, it has been worn, it has been enjoyed, and it has been polished in the past, and we can have it polished again to look like new if you so desire. But to be honest, I would say this is perfectly acceptable for a pre-owned watch, and it's one you can put on, wear, enjoy, and not worry about scratching. So let's show it on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go, comfortably on my 7-inch wrist. It's actually fitting me perfectly at the moment and is essentially a birth year for me. So someone buy this quickly. This is 42mm by 47.5mm lug to lug, 14mm thick, and do keep in mind some of that thickness is the domed acrylic crystal, and 20mm on the lug. So as always with Speedmasters, they are strap monsters. If you're not a fan of this bracelet or the bracelet won't fit you, swap it out for a leather strap and you will be just as happy, I can guarantee you that. So go check it out on the website today. From there over to an Omega Seamaster 300 quartz. We sold one of these recently. That was the automatic version. This is the quartz version, the one that Pierce Brosnan wore in the movie with the quartz mid-size, or at least I believe he wore that one, I'm pretty sure it is. Really, really great watch, and again, priced to fly. I can't believe the price of this one. If you're after a Seamaster and you like this design, this is one to pick up. So let's take a closer look at this one. So there is always something very charming about these Omega Seamasters with the wave dial, and particularly the mid-size. I actually find them really, really nice, and I've been speaking a lot about smaller watches recently, and this being one of those smaller watches in 36mm. I think more and more people are starting to wake up and realize that these wear really nicely as well, and you don't need a big crazy watch on your wrist. You can have something a bit more delicate and dainty in size on the wrist and still get a hell of a lot of enjoyment out of the watch. So this is the reference 2561.80.00, and this is the quartz Seamaster with the Omega quartz caliber 1538 inside. And let me get that in focus so you can see really nice caseback decoration as you'd expect. The Omega Seamaster professional clasp with the button release. It does also have the dive extension hidden away under here, which you can get out as you need. This one does come with some spare links. It comes with its original bezel, because this is a later service bezel and the original bezel was slightly faded, and it also comes with an Omega Bond NATO, which is very cool and will fit the watch nicely. So as I was saying, this is circa late 1990s to early 2000s. These are quite difficult to age based on serial number. It's not based on that with these models, but giving roughly the sort of condition, the age, and the fact you've still got tritium on the dial and hands, that's where I'd put this one, sort of circa late 1990s, early 2000s. The overall condition is very good. It has been worn, it has been enjoyed, but it's in good pre-owned condition, as we'd say, and ready to be put on the wrist of the new owner and enjoyed. So let's show it on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go, currently sized to my 7-inch wrist. I think that looks fantastic. I really, really enjoy these mid-size, and dare I say I actually prefer them to the full size on my wrist of this particular model Seamaster. I think it looks great. So what you're looking at is 36mm by 42.5mm lug to lug, 10.5mm thick, and 18mm lugs. So you could swap it out for a nice leather strap if you so wish. Blue suede would always look good on this one. But to be honest, the bracelet does match it perfectly. So go check out this one on the website today. From there over to an Omega Seamaster 1958 on a beads of rice bracelet. This is gorgeous, 34mm, absolutely impeccable condition with a beautifully refinished dial, and this is going to be an interesting one to look at because we always talk about originality, and a lot of people put originality on a pedestal, and I want to show you a beautifully refinished example and just how amazing they can look. So take a closer look at this one. So from modern Omega Seamaster to a vintage Omega Seamaster, this is, when we think of vintage Seamasters, this is sort of the model and look that comes to mind straight away for me. Apologies about the background noise there, but this is a reference 2846, and this one is from circa 1958 and has inside the automatic Omega caliber 501 behind that beautiful Seamaster caseback, which as you can see is in very good condition. You can still see waterproof faintly stated at the bottom, right there. And as we flip it over, you are presented with the original Omega crystal. I don't know if you can see the little logo there. And the dial, as I was saying in the intro, is refinished. So when you look at this, it is beautifully done. And again, the quality of this is amazing. And I often get asked, you know, why would you ever want to refinish a dial? It just doesn't seem worth it, blah, blah, blah. And like, people would always prefer original. And whilst I agree, you know, I do prefer original dials, there is a limit. And sometimes patina goes too far. Now, let's say that, for example, and I don't believe this was the case with this one, but let's say there was water entry at some point that completely ruined the dial. And I don't mean just made it look overly patinaed, I mean it ruined the dial. What do you do with that watch? You know, let's say no one's willing to buy it as is. Do you dispose of it? Do you just rip it apart for parts? Like, it just seems like a real shame to waste away a watch, especially if it's got a good case like this one has. It's really nice, really solid. The movement inside is fantastic. Why not refinish them? Why not bring a new life to the watch, especially if it's done beautifully like this one? So I'm actually all for it, and I think in the right circumstances it can elevate a watch as opposed to bring a watch down, and that's exactly the case with this one. This one, as I say, 1958, and a beautiful example at that on a Beads of Rice Omega bracelet, which suits it perfectly. But as I say, this reference looks great on a leather strap as well. But they show on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go, comfortably on my 7-inch wrist. Now, it's no surprise, I really like this, and it's a watch I would totally keep for myself if I didn't have my 6694, because the 6694 and this are quite similar in a lot of regards. Granted, they're different in enough regards, but not at this moment in time for me to justify keeping this as well. So 34mm by 42mm lug to lug with us, that nice fat Omega Seamaster case. You have 11.5mm thick and 18mm on the lug, so endless options for this one if you want to swap it out. So go check it out on the website today. From there to a 1968 Omega Seamaster, this time the chronometer model with the day date in gold plate and the larger 36mm size with this beautiful sort of stardust dial, I like to call it. This is a incredible piece, and again, priced to fly. The price of this one is amazing for what you're getting, especially if you're wanting a gold Omega Seamaster. The solid gold ones are way more expensive than this, so this gets you into one that looks like that but a fraction of the cost. So let's take a closer look at this one. So from a 1958 Omega to a 1968 Omega with this beautifully gold capped yellow gold capped Seamaster with a day date and chronometer certification right there on the dial. That's what that extra text is underneath. And talking about the dial, it has this beautiful stardust finish, as I like to call it. It's this sort of graining, like almost sandpaper, very fine sandpaper. It's beautiful, and it plays with the light, and in my opinion contrasts perfectly against the gold tones you see. You also have the original finish on the bezel, which is almost like a sort of graining pattern, which again complements the dial beautifully. Nice Omega crown, and as you flip it over, you're presented with a stainless steel screwed down Seamaster case bag. This is a reference 166.032, and this one, as I say, is from circa 1968, and inside is the automatic Omega caliber 751, which was originally chronometer certified as well. So it's a higher grade movement than your typical automatic calibers that you'd see in most of the Seamasters. And as discussed, this is on the larger size at 36mm. Typically these Seamasters were 34, and when they were 36 they were considered quite large, which is quite interesting really. So and the 34s wear perfect, and these 36 really do wear great as well. Not an awful lot more to say about it. We've got it paired on a very nice strap. I think it looks brilliant, and it's running beautifully. So let's show on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go, paired perfectly on my 7-inch wrist. There's something about old gold that just looks fantastic on the wrist. It's the warmer yellow gold. It's not quite yellow, but it's not quite rose. It's somewhere in between, which I think is really nice. So 36mm by 41.5mm lug to lug, 11.5mm thick, and 19mm on the lug. So a little bit awkward, but there are options out there. And as I say, this strap really suits it, in my opinion, complements the gold. So go check this one out on the website. Gold, today. Let's go over to the Fears Brunswick Midas. This is the polar white dial, now discontinued. At the time of production, Fears could only make 5 of these total a year. So it's rumored there are very, very low numbers of these in general. Just over 10, I've heard, or under 20. I'm not exactly sure which number it is, but it's very, very low, that's for sure. So one to really consider if you're after something like this. And this one has just come back from replating with Fears, so it looks absolutely incredible. Let's take a closer look. Next up, Fears Brunswick time, and this is the Brunswick Midas Midas Polar White, and the Midas is now discontinued and has been for some time, so they no longer produce this model, and as stated in the intro, they only produced 5 a year of this model, of the white dial. Reason being, that's what they were limited to in terms of what they could actually produce because of the process required to make these cases. Now, when you look at this case, as we look around, you can see it's all gold. However, it's not solid gold, and it definitely looks like it is, but it is bronze with 2 layers of gold plating to create this vintage dual gold, as Fears call it, which is a very true old yellow gold tone as opposed to a modern yellow gold where it's a lot more yellow, and again it's not quite rose gold, it's not pink enough, but it's somewhere in between. It's a more coppery yellow gold, which again works really well with most skin tones, mine included. The Polar White dial, very classic, and just looks fantastic against the gold of the case. Really complements it overall. Comes on its original Fears Bristol strap, which is a short length with quick release, and as we flip it over, you're presented with an exhibition case back showcasing the manually wound ETA 7001, a reliable workhorse movement. This one's from October 2018 with its box and paperwork, and as I say, just came back from a refinish at Fears. They replated the case, so the gold is looking absolutely pristine again. So let's show on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go on my 7-inch wrist. So with the original strap, this is, as I say, the short strap. I'm from the second to last hole for my 7-inch wrist, and I would be choosing a regular strap length personally, but again, it still fits my wrist. So here we go. What you're looking at case dimension wise is 38mm by 43mm lug to lug, 11.5mm thick, and 20mm lugs. So endless options for swapping this one out. You know, paired against a glossy black strap, you have the perfect dress watch. Against a brown strap, you have something a bit more casual and still very, very elegant. So go check this one out on the website today. From there over to a quintessential watch, a watch I will always try and have at least one on the website or coming soon to the website. That is the Tudor Black Bay 58 Black, a classic watch, a modern day classic. Will it be a vintage classic one day? I think probably so. So let's take a closer look at this one. Next up, Tudor Black Bay 58 Black. So this is not the new 54, which is the smaller case size. This is the 39mm Tudor Black Bay Black, which is the reference 79030N, and this one's from July 2018 with its box and paperwork. And inside, behind this case back, as we flip it open, is the automatic in-house Tudor caliber, if I can get that in focus, there we go, MT5402. So that's all the specs out of the way. But yes, this is a watch we have had many times and we will have many more times. I think the Black Bay 58 is the modern equivalent for Tudor of the Rolex Submariner, as in it's a quintessential dive watch that ticks so many boxes, and this has the vintage styling which a lot of people really, really like. As I say, a modern classic, and I do think eventually it will become a forever classic in terms of 20-30 years. I am interested to see how we react to, so right now this is a vintage inspired watch. Now in 30 years when this watch becomes vintage, it's going to be a vintage inspired watch, if that makes sense. I wonder what we'll think of that. You know, is that going to be one of those quirky cool things? Is it a phase we're in at the moment that in the next couple of years we will start to see people, you know, just go to vintage or buy a watch that looks brand new? Like, what's going to be the way things change? I think it's quite interesting. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts and opinions on that one. But let's show this one on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go, paired on my 7-inch wrist, a very good looking watch. And to be honest, the new 54 wears amazingly and I do love it, but this is always worn incredibly well on the wrist, and I don't think anyone's going to really complain about how this one wears. So 39mm by 47.5mm lug to lug, 12mm thick and 20mm lugs. So endless options for swapping out, although to be honest, on the bracelet I think it looks best, so go check it out on the website today. From there to, as I've said before, my favorite of the Baltic watches. This is the Baltic and Collected Man collaboration MR01 with the micro rotor. Really, really beautiful dial, and that was exactly what drew me to this model, and I've owned it a couple of times myself is fantastic. So let's take a closer look at this one. Next up, we have this awesome Baltic. So the MR01 range was released by Baltic a little while ago, and that stands for micro rotor, and it has this beautiful, almost Calatrava-esque design in 36mm. And as you flip it over, you're presented with a beautifully decorated micro rotor movement out of China. And again, the price point that they're able to provide these at is incredible. So yes, that's a Chinese micro rotor movement. Yes, it had some hiccups to begin with, as in Baltic had a few that had to go back, but they have really sort of conquered those problems, and there doesn't seem to be any problems anymore, at least that I've experienced in the recent times that I've had a few more Baltics. So this one is a collected man limited edition they did of 300 pieces total, nicknamed the MR01 Blue Roulette, and again based on a vintage Calatrava. The main differences to this one compared to the standard ones is obviously that dial. This is a beautiful dial, very eclectic man in their sort of design focused language, and it has this vertically grained bezel, which again complements the dial perfectly and I think looks truly fantastic. And again, that's different to the standard MR01s. This one's from September 2022, and it does come with its box and paperwork, and it's paired on its original leather strap, which on its own is a great strap as well. So let's show it on wrist and talk dimensions. And here we go on my 7-inch wrist. This actually goes perfectly with what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing like a blue denim shirt and grey shorts, so you've got the grey and the blue. This is actually meant for my outfit today. So 36mm by 43.5mm lug to lug, 10mm thick and 20mm on the lugs with drilled lug holes to make strap change in a breeze. So go check this one out on the website today. Now, before we get on to the really great Oris that's priced incredibly well, let's talk about Longines. We're going to start with the Longines Conquest Automatic Stainless Steel model. This is beautiful, really nice patina, great size, great example, and again priced incredibly well at under £1,000. If you're after a vintage or true vintage watch that modern watches have been inspired by, Longines recently re-released this model, or have done for quite a few years now. And again, getting one under £1,000 I think is fantastic. So let's take a closer look. Now on to a gorgeous Longines Conquest Automatic. This is an early reference from 1957, and the reference is 9000. And inside is the automatic Longines Caliber 19AS, a very renowned movement used by Longines in these conquest movements. You can see the gold medallion there. A lot of the enameling has come out, which is very common. Very few times do you actually see the enamel still present in there, but this one has a little bit left, but you've still got the gold, which is nice and visible with Longines, and everything stated there. Original Longines crown as well, and just a beautifully patinaed dial with the gold accents on the inside, which just complements it perfectly. And I think the brown suede and the overall design and feel and everything just works really, really nicely. As I say, Longines re-released this watch a while ago, and it continues to be one of their best-selling watches, to be honest, both on the secondary market and the modern market, because they did it so well. You know, if you put it next to this one, other than that one looking brand new and the dial being super clean, you wouldn't really know a huge amount of difference between the two. They even got the size correct at 35mm, which I find fascinating. But as I say, this one's from 1957, and it's just a very honest, nice example for under £1,000. I don't think you can go wrong at all. So let's show it on wrist and talk dimensions. And here we go on my 7-inch wrist. A good looking watch at 35mm by 42.5mm lug to lug, 12mm thick and 18mm on the lug. So endless options if you're not a fan of my brown suede pairing, but to be honest, I think that looks really great and complements it perfectly. So go check it out on the website today. From the stainless steel to the gold capped, we have the same watch, the same model, this time gold capped with the gold inside as well. Really beautiful, and again patinaed very, very nicely. I love it when these patina, it adds real charm. So let's take a close look at this one. Why have one Longines Conquest when you can have two beautifully patinaed examples? This is the same reference 9000, however we've got the gold plated or gold capped model, and this one's from circa 1959, so 2 years later than the stainless steel one we have. Beaten away inside is the same automatic Longines Caliber 19AS, and you can see the same Longines gold medallion, and this one has a little bit of its enameling left in there, as you can see. Stainless steel back, stainless steel underside of the lugs, and as we come around you can see that gold plating or gold capping starting over the case, which looks fantastic. And again, we have this price so the same as the stainless steel one at under £1,000, and that way you get to, you know, just choose which one you like more rather than having to pay more for gold plating or less for steel or more for steel or so on and so on. Beautiful Longines sign crown, just a really nice example and a nice looking piece. We'll actually show them side by side right here so you can see them. They are the same watch, just one's gold plated and one's stainless steel. I kind of like having this as a comparison. To be honest, you could very easily enjoy and wear both. So maybe for the hardcore collectors out there, here's your chance to get two really nice examples ready in the collection. So again, not an awful lot more to say about this one. I'd say watch the part about the stainless steel one if you haven't already, because most of it's the same stuff apart from this is gold. So let's show it on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go on my 7-inch wrist. I paired this on a nice brown leather strap rather than a brown suede, because apparently I use suede too much, so there you go. But it would also look good on a brown suede. 35mm by 42mm lug to lug, 11mm thick and 18mm on the lug. So endless options, nice and easy, and one well worth picking up if you're after something like this. So go check it out on the website today. And now finally an Oris TT1 divers with the black wave dial. Really great watch, as always, wears incredibly well. This predates the Aquis. So when you consider what the Aquis is today, this was the Aquis before the Aquis existed. So if you're after that kind of design, that kind of feel, this does all of that, but a more affordable price range and with a little bit more charm in my opinion, being that it's an older model. I just really like it. So let's take a closer look at this one. Now on to a Oris. This is the Oris TT1 as it's known as, but I would call it a pre-Aquis. This is basically the model that predates the Oris Aquis we all know and love today. So this is the reference 7533P, featuring the black bezel and the black wave dial and those iconic leaf style hands that Oris love to use. You've got a date down there at 6 o'clock, and it is on the larger size case wise at 44mm, but when we show it on wrist you'll see it actually wears beautifully. Nice pronounced Oris crown right there, and it comes paired on. It's an integrated Oris bracelet with its links included and its folding clasp, and as we show you the case back you'll see that iconic red rotor. That is an automatic Oris caliber 733, which is essentially an ETA 2824 inside, so a nice reliable movement, easy to get serviced and maintained throughout the years. And this one's from March 2009 with its box and paperwork, which is nice as well. So not an awful lot to say about this one other than if you're after an Oris and you want something like the Aquis, a bit more affordable and maybe a bit quirkier in my opinion anyway, with the wave dial and the leaf hands. This design just feels less aggressive than some of the modern Aquises, which probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you've seen it in person you'll know what I'm talking about. This just feels a lot softer, a lot rounder, a lot more comfortable. Not that the Aquis isn't, it's a fantastic watch. But let's show this one on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go, paired on my 7-inch wrist. It's a big watch, but as I say, it wears really well. So what you're looking at is 44mm by 52mm lug to lug. Now do keep in mind that is the end most lug to the other one, and that end link sort of flares down, so it does wrap around the wrist nicely. 12mm thick, which is very thin for this kind of size, and 11mm at the lugs, that's at this point here, and obviously tapers out and down to the clasp. So go check this one out on the website today. So there you have it, guys and girls. 12 watches varying in price, age, style, everything you could possibly imagine. That is what I always aim to bring you guys and girls every single week. I'm working on next week's drop. Still a couple more spaces to fill, but we're pretty much nearly there. And again, the variety is incredible. I think you guys and girls are going to really enjoy that one, including a solid gold Universal Geneve, a really beautiful early 40s Le Coultre, with the most interesting case shape and faceted crystal. There's some really cool stuff, and again, that's what I'm always aiming to bring you guys. Something different, something you've maybe never seen before, and I know you all appreciate it. So yeah, let me know what was your favorite in this week's drop down in the comments, and we'll see you all again next week. Take care.